Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. I hope you're all doing well. Now today I'm joined by Tim Stillman, who is a big Arsenal women's supporter, and I thought why not jump on here with him to chat about the game a few days later. And I'm not gonna lie, I'm still can't get over that win. I'm still enjoying it. How are you feeling now? It's been a few days since we've won against Chelsea.
Yeah, I had kind of I didn't really have a day off yesterday because I was doing kind of content and stuff. But yeah, Sunday was a really kind of long emotional day. I did the journey all in one day there and back, and that kind of took up a lot of emotional energy as well on an
Yeah.
Easter Sunday when public transport was very, very bad. So I had a bad journey there and back, but all worth it. Obviously, like a variety of emotions as well with what happened with Freedom
Yeah.
Mornham and then winning the game late on. And then the whole kind of Jonas eyed about Emma Hayes incident at the end, and then
It's all crazy.
yeah, it went a bit crazy. And then yesterday I was just doing a lot of kind of content around it and things like that,
Yeah.
but at least I was at home and kind of warm and with family and stuff like that, and I just really kind of took the chance to drink it all in, watch all the videos people had posted and
Oh,
things
it
like
was
that.
crazy online.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was so much online. I mean, I think I'll start off with talking about Freedom Annan because I think I know Leigh Volty put it online that some things are bigger than football. We know this was much bigger. I mean, when I saw it, I didn't even know who went down then, and it just seemed a bit random. And obviously really glad that she's okay, and that was the most scariest thing. I think it must have been really hard for the players to carry on, especially Stina, because that's her best friend and you don't really know what's happening. I hope when they were playing they maybe got alerted, but obviously really glad she's okay now. But just if you've got any words to say about that situation.
Yeah, it was incredibly scary. I don't think I've been at a game and seen that
Mm.
happen before live. And it was kind of right below me, and it took me a few seconds to realize what had gone on, because I saw her kind of go down off the ball, and I thought, was
Yeah.
there a clash of heads or something a minute ago that I couldn't remember? And I was trying to raid the memory banks, and I was like, I don't think so. And then it was very clear very quickly by
Yeah.
the urgency that some of the players were showing, like Katie McCabe, that the physios were showing, that they were making, like, Gary Lewin came on, who's
Mm.
kind of the head of sports science at Arsenal. So he's not usually involved in treating players. He has a much more
Yeah.
overarching view. But the fact that he was on the pitch, I think, suggested it was potentially something serious at that point. And immediately, by the way she was treated, it was clear that something was really amiss, and that made things very peculiar, because you literally just don't know what's happened. Like, you at
Yeah.
that stage, you don't even know, like, the person's going to pull through at all. So you're kind of trying to process all of that. It's the first question I asked Jonas afterwards about what he said to the players at full time in particular, because that happened so close to full time going into extra time. And he kind of said, I had to say, like, look, the medical staff are looking after her. There's nothing you can do about it.
Mm.
What you can do is you can go and win the game for her. That's in your control. And I think the players did remarkably well to compartmentalize that. And I think maybe Jonas mentioned, he said fairly cryptically to me, he said one of the learnings from the Chelsea game was that we didn't cope with stress. I think by that he meant the kickoff delay,
Yeah.
because of the sock issue. I think that's what he was getting at, that he didn't feel that
Yeah.
Arsenal dealt with that particularly well, and that in a way, completely different scenarios, obviously, but in a way that kind of prepared them for this, because it was something they'd talked about, like being in the game and kind of communicating with each other. So happily, we got information pretty quickly, like
Yeah, that was really good.
a minute or two into extra time, that she seemed to be fine. And that kind of allows, because after that you kind of think, I know the game has to be finished, but does it have to be finished? Like, what's kind of gone on here? But getting that early update, I think, kind of really helped, and I'm sure that got through to the players as well.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really hard for the players. I mean, last season we saw with ACL injuries, they had to carry on when the friends were, struggling. But I suppose in this scenario, we didn't really know if Frida would pull through. Obviously, we really hoped she would. I did think she would possibly be okay I think the game wouldn't probably have gone on if it was that bad. But like you said, like Jonas said, we can't control that situation, and the medical staff did a fantastic job. And like you said, McCabe, Stina, to alert them to know that she was on the floor, and it was quite strange. You don't really see it happen much. In the men's game you might see a few players maybe have cardiac arrest. It doesn't happen a lot, but you do see it every so often. So it's obviously a big relief that we were able to win that game. And I just feel really proud of the team. Even if we had lost that, I think it would have been really tough for the team to go on and not think about it, because it would have been in the back of their minds. But we knew we needed to win that. And like you said, the best thing would have been, like we did, win it for her. So I'm really, really happy. And of course, her best friend, Stina, scored. And for me, I thought it was such a tight game, the whole way through. I think it was a very different game compared to the last one. We played them a few weeks ago. But it was a tough game, really, because I think at any moment either team could have scored. But for you, overall, would you say that Arsenal were the better side?
Just about on the balance of the 90 minutes. I don't think there was anything between the teams, really. And it's kind of weird because Arsenal and Chelsea bring out the worst in each other quite often. Like the two teams have had their worst performances of the season against each other in the league.
Yeah.
Like both of the league games were not close, and one team really turned up and the other one didn't. That does happen in this game quite a lot. This was much more how you'd expect an Arsenal-Chelsea game to look. Very, very even, very little in it. I think after 90 minutes, 0-0 was about fair. To be honest, I think what Arsenal did well is that was Chelsea's 8th game for March, and this was Arsenal's 5th. And I think Arsenal banked on a little bit that they would be stronger for both the latter spells of the 90 minutes, but for extra time as well. And they made some kind of changes which were about making the pitch bigger. And the second period of extra time, Arsenal create 3 really good chances, which was probably more than they'd created in the whole game before that. And I think a lot of that was because Chelsea, understandably, I think just faded. It was just too much for them. They've got a lot of injuries as well at the moment. They didn't make as many subs as Arsenal. So I think on the balance of 120 minutes, Arsenal deserved to win it. 90 minutes, I thought 0-0 was completely fair. But I did think in extra time, Chelsea, again, I think any team would do this in this scenario. Chelsea were kind of thinking of let's get this to penalties, and I think Arsenal did well to say no, this is now our chance. So I think we deserved it in the end.
I think, like you said, 90 minutes, I think it was, like you said, very even. I think you put a tweet out saying if either team made a mistake, that would how we would win, because it felt like one of those games where I think in the first half, I think Hannah Hampton's obviously a fantastic goalkeeper, and it was really hard to get anything past her. But I think we did have a few opportunities. No, Beth Mead was really, we tried to score as many. We tried to give it a go, but it just felt like it just wasn't quite working. I mean, I think as well, I noticed as well, Lauren James in that second half, I think Arsenal did really well to keep her quiet. I know she had a really good opportunity, which Zinsberger did save, and Zinsberger as well had a fantastic game. I know she's had a little bit of criticism about her performances, but I think it was really impressive from her. But I agree with what you said. I think I did notice the extra time Chelsea did start to look quite laggy. They kept, giving away silly fouls. Like, Cuthbert, I could see her getting quite tired. But I think it's probably due to them. We're not in the Champions League. I know we're not in as many competitions as them. But I think for me, it's massive for us to win this. I think we really needed this, because I think we know, the league. Probably is a chance we could do it, but I think we kind of know we're not going to win it, and we need to get Champions League for next season. But as you did mention, last time we played Chelsea, we lost 3-1, and I remember watching Kim Little's interview, and she was asked, do you think the Southgate situation affected you, because I suppose if you're prepared to go out to train before the game and plans change, I think if I was a player, I'd probably mess my head up a bit. I'd probably be all over the place. But we know that performance then to this one was very different. What do you think worked well in the game yesterday that didn't work well a few weeks ago?
Yeah, I think there were a lot of soft factors the game a couple of weeks ago. I don't think we coped with that delay very well. The biggest thing, which was a real surprise to me, and Jonas said this after that initial game, was about how much Arsenal gave the ball away. in midfield, and really good players who don't usually do that were giving the ball away.
Yeah.
And Arsenal were a bit all over the place. I think Chelsea did us a bit of a favour in this final, because in the first game they played Lauren James centrally as a second striker, and they put Nushkin up front and took bodies away from Lauren James, and Arsenal didn't cope with that at all. This time they put her on the left, and I don't think that worked as well. I was really surprised they did that, actually, and so that, in a sense, and also, like in the last game, Arsenal didn't start Emily Fox, which I think was a mistake.
Yeah.
And I think, I get it, she'd just come back from the Gold Cup, like she hadn't had much training with the team, but I think you saw in this final that Emily Fox is just a top quality player, and we tied a hand behind our backs by not starting her. And her dealing with Lauren James was, listen, no defender will ever deal completely well with Lauren James because she's world class, but Emily Fox is very, very good as well. So I think Arsenal kind of rectified that a bit. I think the other two things Arsenal did really well. This time they had a bit more of a plan for Chelsea building from the back. So last time they let Kadisha Buchanan have the ball too much, and Buchanan's brilliant at dribbling out, good passer. Jess Carter not so much. And this time Arsenal used like Blackstenius and Marnham, and they allowed Chelsea. They left Jess Carter completely free. They very tightly marked Leupolz and Buchanan. They let Jess Carter have the ball, which kind of isn't really what Chelsea want.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing they did really well, they used their, I mean, they couldn't use their bench last time really because the game was over at half time, but they used the bench very well because they knew Chelsea would tire. They made a lot of changes that were about making the pitch bigger and kind of forcing Chelsea to move around quite a lot more. And Arsenal had some success doing that against Aston Villa last week, where they really put the pressure on in the second half and moved Villa around. So there were things like that were much better. But I also just think individuals turned up much more. Palova did not look like herself at Stamford Bridge. She certainly did on Sunday. Fox started. I thought Frida Mornham and Stina Blackstenius were excellent together. Arsenal have struggled to build relationships in attack, but that's one they have from last season, and they used it very well. So I think, and then, like you say, Zinsberger makes like a match-winning save, whereas in the game at Stamford Bridge, she makes a mistake for one of the goals, and little things like that. Because Arsenal didn't massively outplay Chelsea here. This was an even game.
A close game, yeah.
But it wasn't last time, so they clearly, improved quite a bit.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because that game yesterday, so there were so many good performances, and then the game a few weeks ago, I think it was probably just a bad day at the office. I mean, I know the crowd at Stamford Bridge was incredible as well, but yeah, I think you look at the team yesterday. I mean, I've heard Russo was sick, and I think it probably was the right thing not to start her. But I thought, like you said, Palova as well. I think yesterday she got the player of the match, which I thought was deserved. I just thought she was incredible in everything she did. She made some, really good saves, some blocks, which, would have gone in if it wasn't for her. And, in that midfield, she just dominated it. She made it look so easy. What did you make of her performance? And do you think she was the player of the match?
She was certainly on my list. Yeah, I think her, Emily Fox, and Lotte Wubben-Moy were probably the three real standout players. Like I said, I think Mornham and Blackstenius together as a partnership were really strong in this game. But Palova had a bit of a hamstring injury from the last international break, and I think that might have still been affecting her. I'm speculating there because when Palova is not covering every blade of grass, I kind of tend to think there's probably something wrong.
Yeah.
And whereas this time she really, really did. She really looked just back to her old self, really, like the sort of performances we're used to seeing from her. And I think Chelsea as well, because Chelsea were kind of playing two central midfielders. With Leupolz and Cuthbert. I think that was something Arsenal didn't exploit last time. Chelsea were playing 4-4-2. They could have outnumbered Chelsea in midfield, but didn't really. Whereas this time, I think they looked much better at doing that. But I think with Palova, I don't necessarily think there's anything really tactical behind it. I think and I don't even think this performance was an outlier from her. This is her usual level. And I think at Stamford Bridge, she was quite a way below her
Yeah.
usual level for whatever reason. It might not have been related to the injury. It might just have been one of those days. But
Yeah.
yeah, if I was going for player of the match, I probably would have just gone for Victoria Pelova.
Yeah, it's hard as well because, like you said, I thought Emily Fox had an incredible game. I think since she's been here, I think she's been solid. It feels like she's been here for years, and I think she just did a fantastic job. It is hard to play with the match. I think for me, when I was watching it, I did think pull over because like you said, Stamford Bridge game. We did lose the ball, but the other day, you did notice that he was winning it back, and which helped us get into spaces. And obviously in the second half we did see Leah Williamson come off, and I know she's gone to England camp, she's doing some training, and I think she seems to be okay. Obviously we still have to see that later. And obviously Ruben Moy stayed on, we saw Kadina. A lot of people have said Williamson, Ruben Moy are kind of too similar to play together, and that's maybe why in some of our games against the Villa game, we conceded that goal. Who do you feel like is better suited? Because I think for me, like, I'm happy with either of them playing. I know when Kadina came on, she was incredible. Probably one of our best performances for Arsenal. But obviously it's good to see Williamson back on. She brings something else when she's playing the team. But for you, who do you have a preference of who you like to play together?
Yeah, I think at the moment Arsenal should, kind of prioritise Williamson and Wubben-Moy because I do think those are the two best centre backs at the moment, as well as Kadina played when she came on. And I do think that perhaps there's a slight issue in the Williamson Wubben-Moy. It might be that they're quite similar. I think it's more that I think Lotta sometimes defers to Leah when she's there. Whereas when either when she's not playing or when she came off in this game, I feel like Wubben-Moy really takes control of that defence and is like, right, okay, like it's my defence now. Whereas I think quite naturally when Leah plays there, because Leah she's in the argument for the best centre half in the world, I think there maybe is a bit of deference there. And I think, at Stamford Bridge as well the other week, there were times where Lotta wasn't really tracking runners, which is really unlike her. And it did feel a bit, and that happened at Villa as well, it did feel a bit like, oh, is Leah going to go across there? Like, I think Lotta's confidence has grown so much, almost that she needs to be the senior kind of partner there. But I don't think it will take long to fix. I just think there might be a little thing between them. And I don't think it's something they probably need to have a conversation about. I think it's more subconscious than that. I think there maybe just needs to be a bit of a Lotta being like, look, when something happens on my side, I'm going for it, and I'm going for it with everything. When something happens on your side, you can go for it, and you can go for it with everything. And they're both really good at doing that. So I think that's like a slight kink to iron out.
Yeah.
But I definitely think, Williamson and Wubben-Moy are just the best performing. I mean, Williamson is one of the best centre halves in the world. Lotta has been in immense form, I think, for about 2 years now, and is getting better and better. So I do think Arsenal should prioritise those two. But I think Leah Kadina is, I thought she was excellent when she came on as well.
Yeah, I think it's good to have those options, because I think with Williamson, I think when you've been through an ACL injury, I think it will take you time to get your fitness back up. I know she did play a full 90 minutes, I'm pretty sure, in the Chelsea game a few weeks ago, but I think you could see in the game she doesn't want to, play through an injury. I think when she knows her body needs a bit of a rest, I think that's a good sign for her to notice that. But yeah, I do think they're a really good partnership, and I think for England it's important to play them together as well. And I think with Ruben Moy this season, I really think she's been our player of the season. I think she's been incredible. Like you said, you've seen how much she's grown. She's got this confidence now. I just think it's incredible how she's grown, because you look at our team maybe a season ago, you might not really see her in the start in the lineup all the time, and now you're seeing her start, and she really deserves to be starting every game. And yeah, I just think to have the support as well at the game. The Arsenal fans were so incredible. I think it really helps them, want to win more as well. So I'm really, really happy for that. And yeah, Ruben Moy is definitely growing in confidence, especially this season. I think there has been a lot of good players this season. Like, I think Leah Volti for me has been incredible, but I think Ruben Moy, I don't think anyone can really top her on that. I think she's been incredible. And obviously this season we've won the Conti Cup. We have obviously been out of the FA Cup, the league. We're a little bit behind. I don't really think we can win that. I think all we can do now is win our remaining games. I know we've got Man City coming up, so I think we do have some tough games coming up. But I think if we get Champions League next season, that should be our priority. But you look at the squad we have, and we've brought in some incredible players. I think to start off with, we struggled to gel a bit. I think we needed a bit of time, because obviously it's a new squad and we're playing differently. Do you feel like maybe the players, the manager, will feel a little bit disappointed that they've not won more this season, considering how good the squad is?
Yeah, definitely. There's definitely like a big disappointment in that from everyone, really. And
Yeah,
I expected like a little bit for it to take time to settle down, given
yeah,
the number of new players, not just the number of new players, but you've got like players returning to play from ACL injuries. Some of those aren't straightforward. Like this is Leah's second like niggle since she's come back. Viv's had 2 more surgeries. It's really only Beth who's been pretty much on a straight road back, and all of that stuff takes its toll. But it's definitely still disappointing. I didn't think Arsenal would win the league this season, but I thought there'd be much more in the
yeah,
picture than they are. And I think Jonas has said it himself a few times. They've been very inconsistent. They've shown in big games like this one that of course they can. Of course they're like on a level with Chelsea and Manchester City. Like that's obvious when you see the games, but it's some of the other games where they haven't been consistent enough. They've struggled against low defensive blocks quite a lot this season as well. So it's definitely been disappointing. They needed this
yeah.
trophy on Sunday. They needed it a lot more than Chelsea did, I think, because without it, it would have been a complete bust of a season. Because now they're on like a little island in third place. They're miles ahead of United, but
Yeah.
they're quite a bit back from Chelsea and Man City. I'd be amazed if they finished anywhere other than third. So it'd be really interesting to see how Arsenal use the last 5 games, because in effect, there's not an awful lot of pressure on results.
Mm.
I mean, there always is with Arsenal, but like no one will
Yeah.
be happy to not win. But there's not as much pressure as normal. So, does Jonas start to look to next season, start to bring some players in with a view to that? Or does he take the view, no, we want to win all 5 games? Like you said, there's City away, penultimate game. We want to
Yeah.
finish this season as strongly as possible to go in, to finish strongly. So it'd be really interesting to see how the season finishes. But Sunday felt more like the FA Cup final than the Conti Cup
It did,
final.
didn't it? It felt massive, yeah, for the
Yeah,
club.
because it's basically the last massive game of the season. Really, after this, there's not as much pressure on them, so that they needed that, I think, to repair the belief. Not necessarily with the players so much, but certainly with the fans. And I know we might talk about this in a bit. I do actually think that Emma Hayes might have done something useful for Jonas Sideval in kind of uniting people behind a common enemy a little bit, because I think a lot of supporters had lost some faith in the manager. And I
Yeah,
think it might be useful for him, actually, that kind of people have got his back a little bit over
yeah.
this. And sometimes having that common enemy can be quite useful in terms of getting that buy-in back from the supporters again.
Yeah, I agree, because I think, when the whistle went and the game ended, you could really see the passion from Jonas. I mean, for me, I really like him. I think the season he has made some mistakes, but you can tell by watching him, how much he loves Arsenal, and the passion he has, I think, is so admirable. And I think, like you said, I think we'll go on to talk about it now. I mean, it has been a bit of a talking point. I've been looking online, and I think Arsenal fans in general have sort of the same sort of opinion. Though I've seen Chelsea fans that are sort of saying, you shouldn't really be aggressive to Aaron Cuthbert. I mean, it's hard really to judge with that situation with Aaron Cuthbert, because obviously I wasn't there, and from what I've seen, it seems like he's just kind of been a bit passionate for his team, and he's just wanted the ball or whatever the situation was with that. I mean, it's hard. I mean, I can't help but think if Jonas had pushed Emma Hayes, his career, for me, I personally think, would have been over. And could you imagine, how awful that would have been for him? But yeah, what are your thoughts on the situation? Because it's like when I saw it happen at the time, I was like really confused because obviously I didn't really know what the context was. I didn't know if she was just a bit gutted she'd lost and she didn't take it well. But yeah, what are your thoughts on the whole situation?
Yeah, I think I should preface this by saying that Jonas does have previous.
Yeah,
He's very animated on the touchline. I think in his first season, there was a kind of an incident with Martha Thomas when she was playing for
yeah,
Manchester United, which I don't think looked good from him, frankly.
mhm,
Where she made a bad tackle on Beth Mead, like right next to the dugout, and Jonas kind of came onto the pitch, and I think that was over the top. I
yeah,
think he kind of knows that as well. And he's always been very animated on the touchline, and I think some players like that, some players don't, and
yeah,
etc. etc. So he I think it's probably too loaded a term to say he has a history, but he certainly has a reputation. On this occasion, I was right behind it, and I wanted to take my time really before kind of delivering any kind of opinion on it, because from where I was, I thought he kind of just stood there, and Erin Cuthbert came up to him and shouted at him, which is fine. I'm not really bothered about that. Either way, it's the last minute of a cup final. Everyone's very het up.
yeah,
Completely understand that. I don't think he really did anything though, other than kind of stand. And I don't even think he stood his ground in like an aggressive way in this. I think he just kind of stood there and then walked back. And I do think, I think I think Emma's been a bit out of order,
mhm,
actually, with some of the labels. Those labels stick, and I don't think that was right for this situation. There's also something in the kind of post-match comments. Emma Hayes referenced Jonas Seideval being booked. He was, but he wasn't booked for that incident. He was booked for the goal celebration because he ran onto the pitch, basically. And I think it was a little bit naughty to conflate that
yeah,
and say that he got booked, but not mention that he wasn't booked for anything he did with Erin Cuthbert. And the background for people who don't know as well is that the Conti Cup final operates on a one ball system unless both teams say they want multi ball. Arsenal said they wanted multi ball. Chelsea said they wanted one ball. So when the ball goes out of play for a throw in the last minute of extra time, a Chelsea member of staff runs off and gets another ball. And so Jonas was, gently pointing out, as I think any manager would in that scenario, you guys said you wanted one ball, so you don't get to do multi-ball now, kind of thing.
yeah,
And look, Erin Cuthbert took exception to that. Again, I think that's fine. I think everyone in the last minute of a cup final would take exception to that. I think this particular incident is nothing really,
mhm,
and I do think that there's been a bit of deflection that's gone on. And again, I get it when managers do that. I'm not generally that upset when managers do stuff like that, but I do think it's a bit out of order to do it like that and kind of really, besmirch
yeah,
someone's name like that. Like I said, there have been incidents in the past. Well, like the Martha Thomas one, I
yeah. I
think
agree
it
with
would
you
have
on that.
been,
Yeah,
yeah, I think it would have been, if that had happened, I think that those comments would have been fine, but not in this scenario. And I do think it's a little bit out of order. And like I said, I'm a man talking about this, and I have to. That's why I wanted to take my time about it as well, because what I determine to be, male aggression compared to a woman, probably going to be very, very different things. But I've seen like female journalists, and it seems that the press isn't on Emma's side on this. Like I've seen, prominent female women's football journalists I really respect say that they don't think she was right to say that. And like I, when I say I'm relieved to hear that, I think okay, that's in line with what I think as well, and I'm kind of
yeah.
glad, to have that as well, because I understand I'm coming from a different
Mhm.
standpoint.
Yeah, I think, I mean, I was listening to Talksport on the radio this morning, and they were saying, if Emma Hayes wasn't happy with how Jonas was speaking to Erin, he could have just, Emma Hayes could have just spoken to Jonas privately, or maybe just said in a press conference, I'm not very happy with how it went. And I think, like you said, with the words that she used, like the male aggression, it kind of does label it a little bit in a bad way. to, like, I think with Jonas, I think since he's came, I remember the first game of the season, I think we beat Chelsea. I think it was like 3-2 at the Emirates, and you know, I love the passion, and I think he's just like you said, he's very animated, a bit like Arteta, I suppose. He likes to get out of his little area, and you know, I think with the Martha Thomas thing, I think I did find that a bit difficult to watch because
Yep.
I think when you're in the moment, you do get heated, you do get, you get involved in the game. But I do think, I think maybe because he's a man, he gets a bit different. I mean, which he shouldn't really. I think he's just passionate. I mean, if it was a woman, maybe giving it to a player, maybe it wouldn't be seen that way. But I think with Jonas, I think it's obviously difficult. But like you said, you listen to a lot of people. The majority of them do feel as though Emma is in the wrong. But it's a bit difficult, isn't it, really, for Jonas to be put in this light at the moment. But I think, I've seen a lot of stuff online, a lot of videos of it. I think a lot of people aren't happy with it. I mean, I think, I think even, if Jonas wasn't wrong, if he did speak to Erin in a bad way, I still don't think Emma just should have pushed him either way. I don't think her reaction was like appropriate. I mean,
That's
if
very heat of the moment. Let's say Emma Hayes is a sore loser, always has been. Now, again, I don't really see that as a criticism. I think most winners, being a winner and being a sore loser, usually go hand in hand.
Mhm.
So when I say she's a sore loser, I think she tends to be quite salty in defeat, but I'm not particularly bothered about that. I think that when you win as much as she's won, I kind of think it comes with the territory. I think all
Yeah,
successful managers have at least a bit of that in them. I just felt this was a little bit too far. And the term male aggression, she used it twice. She used it with the BBC. She used it in the press conference as well. So she thought about it, and decided to use that phrase, which
yeah.
is her prerogative. If that's what she thinks. I don't think I agree on this occasion personally, and I think you're right. I think a lot of people don't, but like I say, it's probably not firmly for me to say.
Yeah, it's hard, really, I suppose. I mean, I think it's really weird with Jonas and Emma. They've got this. I mean, there's always a rivalry with us in Chelsea, but now it feels like there's more heat than ever. I think it's obviously good to have that in the game. I mean, I was watching the commentators, and they thought it was a bit crazy to see that, but I think it just shows you that I think they have respect for each other. I think after that situation, it probably will calm down soon. But I think, even though I think Emma Hayes is a great manager and she's obviously done a lot with Chelsea, I do think she is. I think when you're a winner, and maybe they've won a lot more than us in recent years. I think when you're not used to kind of losing, I think it's a hard one to take. I mean, they did have a few penalty incidents, and I did want to touch on about VAR because we don't see
Mm.
that in the WSL. It's only sort of in major games, like cup finals, we see it. And for me personally, I thought it was a breath of fresh air to see that. I mean, I know Chelsea had a goal, but it was a bit of a handball, and I think that probably would have been given if it wasn't there. But for you, would you like to see VAR being used in the league in the WSL?
But personally, no. I was very grateful for it on Sunday because that was absolutely the correct decision to disallow
Yeah.
that goal. So I won't pretend I wasn't grateful for it. I think it was, used quite well in
Yeah.
this game. It was relatively unintrusive. There were a couple of, handball kind of penalty shouts which were dealt with quite quickly. I think also with those situations, the ball went out of play quite soon after, so it didn't disrupt the flow of the game too much. But personally, I'm not a fan of
Mhm.
VAR, to say the least. Never was for its implementation. And with regards to the WSL, I think the WSL should go the opposite way and say we don't have this, and
Mhm.
use it as a selling point for the league. But also, but that's just my view. I know a lot of people who are pro, and that's absolutely fine. I think it just depends on what you personally value in the game. Do you value the flow of the game, or do you value justice? Personally, I value the flow more, but I know people value justice more, and I think that's totally fine. But I think with the WSL as well, I mean, first of all, not all of the grounds can take it at the moment, including
Yeah.
Boreham Wood. Meadow Park don't have the facilities for it. But also, I think first the WSL should focus on, and are focusing on, like the increased professionalization of the referees, because a lot of them aren't full-time pro, and getting that kind of pipeline, and I think adding VAR to semi-pro referees, and actually the referee pool is not huge. And that's the other thing about VAR. One of the reasons I think it's been so messy in the men's game, it was always going to be, because you're quadrupling the number of officials you need to kind of take charge of a game. That obviously dilutes the quality and of the officials you're using. And then you've also got this situation where people who've been referees their whole lives have all of a sudden had this bomb dropped on them, like you've now got to use VAR. I think that will get better over the years. I think when you start getting referees come through who've always used it, it will get better and better. But at the moment, we're in a bit of a messy period where guys and girls who've been referees for 20, 25 years, all of a sudden their job's completely changed. And I think the WSL is just not ready for that, both in facilities and the number of officials they have, probably the training that the officials have had at this point. Like, even if I could imagine a world where I was pro VAR, I think that the WSL needs a few years to kind of iron some of these things out first.
Yeah, I agree. I do think the referee in the WSL, I think it has been quite poor. I've noticed. I mean, this season I wouldn't say it's been too bad. I think the season where we were 1 point off from Chelsea. I do think that season especially was quite poor. I think the problem with VAR is that it's always, it's people that are using it for one. And I look at other teams that maybe like like a West Ham or a Brighton that probably don't have the support we have, and they don't have the opportunity to play at bigger stadiums. So it would be hard for that to happen there. In a stadium that probably couldn't manage it there. So I think for me, in the future it could be a possibility. But I do think it worked really well at the weekend. I think it was quite obvious to us it was a handball. Chelsea carried on with it, and they would have taken that. I thought the referee and I thought VAR worked really well, because I know there was a few handball incidents for Chelsea. But I think for me at the moment, in future we might see it. It's hard because VAR can go two ways. It can either ruin football, or it can either really help football, the way it did the other day. I think it worked really well for us. I know some Chelsea fans weren't happy with the decisions, but I think they were quite fair. It will be really interesting to see how that goes. But Tim, thank you so much for coming on my channel today. I've really enjoyed it. It's been lovely to reflect on the weekend, that incredible victory. Before we go, do you want to just tell people a bit about what you do? Because I know you do a lot of blogs and you write a lot about Arsenal.
Yeah, sure. My absolute pleasure, particularly to talk about this game. I'm not done talking about it. Yeah, sure. So I write for arsblog.com. So I write a weekly column about the men's team, but I'm kind of an Arsenal women correspondent, so I cover all of the games, go to all the press conferences, blah blah blah. Also have a Arsblog Substack, which is a weekly newsletter, free to sign up, which is about the women's team. Sometimes it's tactical stuff, sometimes it's stuff about the journalism around the game, or fan culture, or wider things, whatever's kind of on my mind, really. And I'm also on a podcast about the men's team called the Arsenal Vision podcast. So yeah, I do quite a lot of Arsenal content, quite a lot of women's football content more broadly as well. So yeah, check it out if you're interested.
Yeah, I love that. I think it's just nice. I think when you're writing, you're kind of in your own world about how incredible the game is. It must be hard when you've lost, because you keep going around in your head about it. But yeah, please do check that out. But as I said, it's been so lovely to chat with you. It would have been a lot harder if we'd have lost, I think. But I think it's obviously really good. Frida's okay, we've won, and overall it's a good time to be an Arsenal fan right now. And I hope you guys that are watching this back do enjoy it. Please do hit the like button for me. Please do subscribe, and I will see you all in my next video. Bye.